Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Tuesday, November 11th, 2025. My dear friend, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, joins us now. Professor Sachs, a pleasure. Thank you for accommodating my schedule. Thank you for all the time that you give us. It's so informative. Professor Sachs, during the oral argument on tariffs in the Supreme Court last week, the Department of Justice, without tongue in cheek, told the court that tariffs are not about money, that they're about foreign policy, and the collection of money is just an ancillary matter. Aren't tariffs taxes?
First of all, under the U.S. Constitution, tariffs or duties are in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, meaning that they are under the responsibility of the U.S. Congress. It is not the power, the constitutional role of the President of the United States single-handedly by executive decree to define America's tariffs, its duties, or its foreign economic policy. The whole idea, whether they are money or not, and of course they are a tax, but whether or not they are, the idea that the President of the United States has the authority to do what he's doing is false, completely unconstitutional, and of course, whether justices of the Supreme Court roll over and let our republic end and turn it into one-man rule, we're holding our breath on that. But from a constitutional point of view, there can be no doubt that what we have is a grave, absolutely unconstitutional grab of power by a president who declares emergencies right and left. And by the way, not even for foreign policy, because an ad runs against him in Ontario and he raises the tariffs 10 percentage points on Canada. Or he doesn't like a court trial in Brazil and he raises the tariffs on Brazil. This is madness that is happening right now. It is blatantly unconstitutional. The United States system, of course, emerged in 1787 with the Constitutional Convention. But just to say that our longer tradition emerged from Britain, and nothing in British history for hundreds of years, even before the United States, would ever have allowed a king to do what Donald Trump is claiming that he has the right to do right now. This is a blatantly unconstitutional grab of power. And in this sense, our Constitution hangs in the balance right now. And I think it was in the New York Times. I'm traveling, so I can't absolutely be sure, but I think it was in the New York Times where this case before the Supreme Court was characterized as the most important case of the Chief Justice of the United States in his term as Chief Justice, John Roberts. Well, he's a classmate of mine from Harvard College many decades ago. And I know what I learned in class when I attended school. And that is that we have the rule of law and a constitutional system. And I hope that my classmate has learned the same thing, because now the responsibility of saving our republic lies on his shoulders. And he really, for all of us, had better perform and not just roll over to some bizarre claim of one-man rule, which is what actually was argued at the Supreme Court in that hearing.
Right. I'm obviously 110% in agreement with what you said, as are many, many people who are legal scholars or legal commentators and look at these things from across the ideological spectrum. This is not Republican versus Democrat or liberal
Absolutely.
versus conservative. This is people who believe in the Constitution versus people who think the president can do whatever he wants.
And what we should add, just on this question of money or not, the explanations that Trump has given are so all over the place. And of course, revenues was repeatedly invoked about all the revenues and how he's going to close the deficit with this. So to claim that this isn't about this is just part of the blatant, terrible lying of this administration and the complete denigration of justice, of our Department of Justice. He renamed our Defense Department as the War Department. He could rename our Justice Department as the Injustice Department, the way that it actually behaves. And then we would understand what it's all about. But Trump has said it's about drugs, it's about an ad, it's about a case in the judicial system in Brazil, it's about tariff revenues, it's about remaking the U.S. economy. He's given every answer. That's what you get when it's one-man rule and they're drunk with power. And he thinks that he can just say an executive order by the power vested in me as president of the United States under the International Economic Emergency Powers Act, and then declare any emergency he wants. That's the whimsical nature of this whole policy. I really hope that the justices understand how utterly whimsical all of this has been. And that's the opposite of what our system should be about.
So I was quite disappointed when the government made that argument because it's extremely disingenuous. I think the justices can see right through it. And you may not know this because you're traveling. Yesterday, the president asked the Justice Department to tell the Supreme Court that if the tariffs stay on, he expects to collect, this number is mind-boggling, so you can deal with the economics in a moment after I finish this lengthy question, $3 trillion. The DOJ lawyers said, Mr. President, we told the court the tariffs were not about money. If we amend our pleadings now to say it's about collecting $3 trillion, we're definitely going to lose. This has not yet been resolved. This is what happens when the client tells the lawyers what kind of an argument to make.
And I assume that the justices will read all about it as you have. I missed that little factoid, but this is how shambolic all of this is. The reasons that have been given are bouncing off the walls. They never made any sense. Speaking just in economic terms, this is a bizarre, destructive policy. But speaking in political and constitutional terms, it is a brazen, unconstitutional grab of power. And we would never give one person the right to remake the trading system of our country. A $30 trillion a year economy in the hands of one person who makes a decree whatever he wants, and that is supposed to be the way that our system works. It's unbelievable.
$3 trillion. I mean, what kind of math are they doing?
They usually, with numbers like that, I didn't see the numbers, but first of all, it's probably quoting over 10 years. So maybe it's $300 billion a year claimed. I have no idea. I don't want to justify some calculation, but probably a number like that is meant to be a 10-year figure, and they don't mention that particular fact.
Okay. Yesterday, the White House announced, as the president was meeting with the former terror leader al-Jilani, that the United States is going to build a military base in Damascus a few minutes ago, right before we came on air, Professor Sachs, so you probably don't know this, the United States announced that it's going to build a military base for $500 billion in Gaza, and station a few thousand troops there. What is going on? We have 750 military bases around the world. We need another one in Gaza and another one in Damascus?
Well, for those of us who used to play the board game Risk, which was a game about taking over the world, the idea was that you'd have your piece on every spot of the board to win. So you would take over the world. That is what the military-industrial complex absolutely yearns for. And so the idea of American military bases everywhere is part of the long-term game plan. It's bankrupting our country, but it's part of the long-term plan. It's keeping us in endless wars, but it's part of the long-term plan. It's why we got into the war in Ukraine. And while Trump says it is Biden's war, it's Trump's war too, because even in Trump 1, he built up the Ukrainian military so that it could join NATO. And that means expansion for U.S. military bases. And we should recall about this new claimed base in Syria. How is it that there's this government in Syria? Well, please, let's remember that the United States was engaged in a 14-year effort which killed hundreds of thousands of people in Syria to overthrow a government. And it's typical. The United States overthrows a government and then it puts a military base there. That's how the system works. We are run by the military-industrial complex. Trump has been part of this because all presidents are part of this. In this case, the war to overthrow the Syrian government started with Obama in 2011. And Obama signed the presidential finding called Operation Timber Sycamore to assign the CIA the role of overthrowing the government of Syria. Well, it didn't go quite according to plan because it was supposed to be a quick operation. It was 14 years. It destroyed Syria. Israel operates in Syria now and it holds territory. They broke that place to pieces. But the idea that then you put in a U.S. military base, that's according to plan. The base, by the way, in Gaza is also according to plan. It's not in Gaza. It's supposedly, according to the news reports, on the border of Gaza. But all of this is part of the greater Israel plan. It's to allow Israel to act with impunity throughout the Middle East at the U.S. expense, by the way, because, yes, the U.S. will pay for all of this so that Israel has the prerogative to massacre Palestinians, to permanently rule over Palestinians, to expropriate Palestinians, to ethnically cleanse Palestinians. What is happening now is not peace. What is happening now is enforcement through genocide and now through the placement of the U.S. military to have Israel have its greater Israel policy. It's a madness. It has been war all over the Horn of Africa, North Africa, Libya, Somalia, Sudan. Israel's been involved in all of this deeply. And in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, in Iran, and the United States pays for it, is complicit in it. And so none of this is a surprise. This is an ongoing plan of the Zionist extremism combined with the U.S. military-industrial complex.
I'm going to give your voice a little break and your heart a little lift by playing for you a female member of the Israeli Knesset, delivering to Prime Minister Netanyahu's face just the tongue lashing he needs, but it's only a tongue lashing. Chris, cut number 7.
I blame you, Benjamin Netanyahu. I blame you for the mindset in October. The greatest disaster this country has ever known happened on your watch. Even if you sleep with a clear conscience, we will not forget. We will cry out over the abandonment, and a state commission of inquiry will be established. I blame you, Netanyahu. Your personal corruption has become a national plague. Every corrupt person becomes your partner. The bigger the file you have on someone, the more convenient they are for you. I blame you, Netanyahu, because you have forgotten what it means to be Jewish. Trump returned hostages in your place, while you shamelessly were busy trying to get him to grant a pardon. I blame you, Netanyahu. Racism has always served you. It has torn us apart from within. You turned half the nation into an enemy. We will cleanse the poison you have poured here for 30 years. We will return to being a united society. I blame you, Netanyahu. I blame you, Netanyahu, yes.
I don't know who she was or the circumstances under which she was permitted to make those statements, but I've not heard a tongue lashing like that in Israel, in the Knesset, toward him while he sat there and smirked. I assume you could see the smirks on your end of this video. I've not seen anything like it.
The tragedy is that not only did Netanyahu, with the complicity of Biden and Trump, commit a genocide, and that will most likely be adjudicated by the International Court of Justice when it makes its ruling. But we have plenty of dispositive evidence and very careful judgments that have been made pointing to Israel's genocide. But to this moment, the United States is working hand in hand with Netanyahu, Trump and Netanyahu, to ensure that there is no state of Palestine, that there is no real peace, that there is no justice, that the genocide does not awaken in the United States or Israel a spark of honesty and justice, but actually it just becomes a prelude to the continued Israeli occupation and domination over the Palestinian people. This week, the United States is pushing a resolution co-written with Israel that will give control over Gaza to Donald Trump. Blatant imperialism, like the mandate, so-called, that Britain had over Palestine from 1921 to 1947. Now the United States and Israel are trying to push this through the UN Security Council this week. And if they do, and the US is pressuring, bludgeoning, bribing, threatening, cajoling, every way that it can, other countries to support this resolution, then Donald Trump and his new military base on the border of Gaza will rule Gaza. And what will that mean? It will mean the end of the world's call for a state of Palestine. What's happened is that in September, following the genocide, following a ruling of the International Court of Justice, following repeated votes of the UN General Assembly, following repeated votes of the UN Security Council, albeit with the US veto, the world has said there must be a Palestinian state. But what is happening right now, these days, is the United States is pushing through a resolution to give the United States control over Gaza. If this happens, the purpose of this is that Israel will never retreat from Gaza. There will never be a Palestinian state. And so as much as this member of the Knesset is vituperating against Netanyahu, till this moment, the United States government, Trump, is working hand in hand with Netanyahu to block a real peace and to block justice.
How can this possibly pass the General Assembly and the Security Council, Professor Sachs?
It's so strange, but last month, Trump put forward a so-called plan, a peace plan, another one of these travesties of the Orwellian name. It's no peace plan at all, because it absolutely not only does not address the Palestinian people's right to a state, but it completely subverts it by establishing what they call a peace board, or a board of peace, again, an Orwellian name, in which Donald Trump will preside, that would have all the rights of governance of Gaza. One can't make this up. Instead of the Palestinian people ruling, especially after they have suffered a genocide, now they're being told Donald Trump is going to rule. Well, we know what that means. We know that Donald Trump and Miriam Adelson and Bibi Netanyahu, that's their plan. That they're all happy as can be, that they hold the power, the military base, and they want this vote from the UN. And of course, it seems completely bizarre that this could actually pass. But Trump says, well, I made the ceasefire. You know, after you've committed a genocide, you stop the mass killing and you give yourself a heroic applause. That's what's happened so far. And I can tell you how many states around the world are being directly threatened right now by the United States or bribed in their way. If you don't do this, if you don't back us, well, we can vote against you in that program that you need at the International Monetary Fund, or you won't get the U.S. technology, or if you do this, you're going to get U.S. military equipment. Whatever it is, they're pulling out the stops of threats and cajoling and shakedown operations to try to get this through. That's what the Israel lobby does.
I can't imagine that they could threaten or shake down the Russians or the Chinese.
So this is a very important point. And to my mind, as I've been traveling worldwide, people are saying, well, maybe we should do it because a ceasefire and so forth. And my own view is that the travesty of it is that the world spoke almost in unity last month for a Palestinian state. And the purpose of this resolution right now is to subvert the worldwide call. So yes, maybe the Russians and the Chinese will step in the Security Council. Maybe there are many other members that could block this. But the drama is the U.S. is pulling out the stops with pressure, shakedowns, whatever they can do to try to get this through right now.
One last question before we finish, Professor Sachs. Why has there been no visible progress towards a reestablishment of normal diplomatic relations between Russia and the United States since the meeting in Anchorage, Alaska? The Russian embassy and properties in D.C. are still supposedly seized by the U.S. government, and the American embassy monstrosity that is in Moscow. I just drove past it a few weeks ago. is still 95% empty. Is it because Marco Rubio does not want relations normalized and does not want the war in Ukraine to end?
Essentially, yes. He's not the only one. It's because the president is very weak and inconsistent and without possibly awareness of what he's doing. But what happened is that the U.S. Went to Russia with proposals to end the war in Ukraine. And on the basis of those proposals, there was the meeting in Alaska of President Trump and President Putin. And at that meeting, President Putin went through point by point the proposal that the U.S. had put forward and said, "Is that your proposal, President Trump?" And Trump said yes. And President Putin said, "Well, on this basis, we can move forward. But we need to make sure this is your proposal." And Trump reportedly said, "Well, I have to check with my allies." And that was the end of it. Because as soon as the meeting ended, despite the fact that this was a proposal that had been brought by Trump, by his emissaries, then the hard neocons, including Rubio and Kellogg, and many of the Europeans, all started to raise their voice, and Trump has very limited attention span and knowledge. He does not have consistency. He doesn't speak to the American people about any of this. This is also a complete insider's game. And he changed. He never went back to the Russians and said, "Yes, this is our policy." And after this meeting, in which there was the prospect of actually something happen, the United States never confirmed it. In fact, Trump changed and started making new threats, and there has to be a ceasefire, which was the opposite of what had been said, because what Trump and Putin had agreed was that there needed to be a political resolution of the war, not simply stopping of the fighting temporarily. And so this is the inconsistency that has meant that basically, again, the military-industrial complex of the United States is trying out its drones, it's trying out its weapon systems. It wants to continue to fight because it's the Ukrainians doing the dying. It's Ukraine that's being destroyed, and they want to continue the war. And Trump, if he was consistent, had to, within an agreement with Russia, the means to end the war. But it hasn't happened yet. Recently, the foreign minister of Russia has publicly reached out to his counterpart saying, "No, we talked and we're ready to continue to talk. But the Russians are waiting to hear, is what you told us real or not real?" And the answer so far has been not real.
Before we go, this news just broke. The Guardian is reporting that the government of Prime Minister Keir Starmer is suspending sharing intelligence with the United States over the boat strikes in the Caribbean because of its fears that it might be implicated in extrajudicial killings, well, which of course are a war crime. Even though Britain and Canada are both members of the Five Eyes, they are distancing, Canada as well, distancing themselves from these severe violations of international law. Britain, of course, still has a lot of possessions in the Caribbean on which, from which MI6 operates its intelligence activities. These will no longer be, supposedly, if this is true, shared with CIA, DIA, and American intelligence officials. Surprised?
We should understand that, again, in terms of the deep state, the military-industrial complex, the U.S. has been trying to overthrow the government of Venezuela for 23 years. since a coup attempt in 2002. And it has used economic means, it has used military means, it has tried to back military coups inside the Venezuelan military. It has broken the economy of Venezuela to pieces. And now a huge naval armada is nearby, and Trump has openly said that he's tasked the CIA with operations inside Venezuela. They're shooting at boats, fishermen, local smugglers, who knows? But they're killing people on order directly from the Oval Office. And I can tell you, we may have discussed it before, but I know from two Latin American presidents that in Trump's first term, in 2017, he had a dinner with the Latin American presidents, and he openly said to them, "Why don't I just invade Venezuela?" And they were shocked, and they talked him down from it. Mr. Trump, this would not be a good idea. This would create havoc and so forth. But I think we're back to that right now. We're on the verge of it. Whether they carry through with something so reckless and lawless and destabilizing, we don't know. The U.S. And the CIA has a long tradition of that. Let's hope that it doesn't happen. But it's definitely under consideration right now.
Professor Sachs, thank you very much. Thanks for your economic, constitutional, and geopolitical analysis. It's so valuable and so much appreciated. All the best to you. Safe travels. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
Excellent. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Coming up tomorrow, Wednesday at 8 o'clock in the morning, Dr. Gilbert Doctorow. At 11 in the morning, Phil Giraldi. At 1:15